Welcome back, everyone, to Echoes of Ihsan, our show where we like to, take these deep dives into Islamic traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And today's topic is going to be super interesting. I think
Let's.
we're going to be talking about seeking rain and blessings.
Okay.
And we're going to be looking at it through the lens of Sahih Bukhari, book 17,
Okay.
which is titled Invoking Allah for Rain, Istisqaa.
Yeah.
So for our listeners who might not know, Sahih Bukhari is basically like a collection of sayings and traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and is considered like one of the most authentic sources
Right.
in Islam. So like it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's like a guidebook, passed down through generations, giving us insights into the prophet's life and his teachings.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to be focusing on this thing called the Istisqaa prayer,
Okay.
which is a special prayer for seeking rain during times of like drought or when you really need it.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to understand not just like how to do the prayer, but also like what it meant for the people back then. Like how did they see this whole thing with nature and their reliance on God?
Right.
What can we learn from it today?
Yeah, those are all really great questions. And I think book 17 of Sahih Bukhari is like the perfect place to find these answers.
Yeah.
It's full of stories about, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, leading his community in prayer for rain. And it gives us this glimpse into their lives, their struggles, their faith.
Right. It's like you can almost imagine what it was like back then when, a drought could mean the difference between like,
Absolutely.
thriving and starving.
Yeah, their whole life depended on it.
Exactly. So it makes sense that they would turn to a higher power.
Yeah, for sure. The Istisqaa prayer, it wasn't just about like asking for rain, It was about acknowledging that they depended on Allah God for everything.
Mm-hmm.
It was a way of saying like, hey, we've done everything we can, but we need your help.
That's a good way to put it.
And what's really interesting is this prayer wasn't just like a quiet thing you do by yourself. It was this big communal thing.
Oh, really?
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he would lead the whole community in prayer.
Wow. So everyone would come together?
Yeah, everyone, rich, poor, young, old, all together.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and there are all these accounts in Book 17 that describe these gatherings. They would go to the musalla, which is like this open prayer ground.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and they would pray together.
Can you imagine that scene, like a huge open space, everyone gathered there?
Exactly, and you can almost feel the weight of their hope and desperation.
It must have been incredible.
And the musalla itself becomes the symbol of their faith, this place where they come together not just to pray, but to find comfort and support in each other.
That's beautiful. And at the center of it all is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, leading the prayer.
Right. There are these detailed descriptions of his actions during the prayer, especially this one thing that always stands out to me. He would turn his cloak inside out.
Really? Why would he do that?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? It seems like such a simple thing, but it has to have a deeper meaning.
I wonder what it symbolizes.
Well, a lot of scholars see it as a sign of humility, turning away from worldly things and standing before God with nothing.
It's like he's saying, I have nothing to offer but my need.
Exactly. And some scholars say it shows how serious the situation was. Like turning your clothes inside out is a sign of distress.
Like a signal for help.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of powerful, there are all these stories in Book 17 where the prophet's prayers are answered right away with tons of rain.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And it's not just like a little sprinkle. We're talking like downpours for days.
Wow. So they went from needing rain to having too much of it.
Sometimes. Yeah, it's kind of funny in a way.
It is, actually.
And it shows you the power of prayer.
Makes you wonder, did they have prayers for when they needed the rain to stop?
That's a great question, and yes, they did. There's this beautiful story in Sahih Bukhari where people came to the prophet complaining about all the rain because they were worried about their homes and their animals.
Oh.
And the prophet, he prayed for the rain to be redirected to other areas.
So he didn't just try to make it disappear.
No, he asked for it to fall on the mountains, the hills, the valleys, places where trees grow.
That's so thoughtful.
It shows he cared about all of creation.
Yeah, and it makes you think about how everything is connected. What might be too much in one place could be a blessing somewhere else.
Exactly. There's this balance in nature, and the prophet understood that.
It's really amazing how these stories from so long ago are still relevant today.
I agree. The idea of being connected to nature, respecting the balance, it's more important now than ever.
Especially with everything going on with climate change.
Exactly. We have to remember that we're not separate from nature, we're part of it.
And our actions have an impact on the whole world.
Right. And these stories remind us to be humble, to be grateful for what we have, and to take care of the planet.
It's not just about the physical rain, but also the rain of blessings and mercy that we all need in life.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And I think that brings us to a really important point, the power of humility. The prophet turning his cloak inside out during the Istisqaa prayer
Yeah.
wasn't just a symbolic thing. It was a real expression of humility.
Absolutely. It's like he was stripping away everything superficial and standing before God with just his pure self.
And it's not just about humility towards God, it's also about humility towards nature.
Right. We have to remember that we're not in control of everything.
And that we depend on the natural world for our survival.
It's a reminder to approach nature with respect and care.
This reminds me of something else I saw in Book 17. There's a part where the prophet is teaching his companions how to make supplication, how to ask God for something.
Oh, yeah.
And he tells them to be sincere, to be patient, and to accept whatever God decides.
That's such an important lesson.
It's about aligning our will with God's will.
Exactly. We're not trying to force things to go our way.
We're surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
And that surrender can bring us so much peace, especially when things are tough.
Because we know that we're not alone, that there's something guiding us.
Exactly. And it's not just about dealing with drought. It's about navigating all the complexities of life.
It's a roadmap for how to live a more meaningful life.
And what I love is that these teachings aren't just abstract ideas. They're presented through stories.
Right. It makes them so much more relatable and impactful.
We can see how these principles played out in the prophet's life and the lives of his companions.
And it inspires us to try to live by those same principles.
It reminds us that we're all human. We all have struggles, and we can find strength and comfort in our faith.
As we've been talking about these stories, I've been thinking about how much they emphasize the prophet's character, his compassion, his humility.
Yeah, he was such an incredible example for all of us.
I keep thinking back to that image of him turning his cloak inside out. It's like he was embodying humility in a way that words couldn't express.
It was a powerful visual statement.
And it's not just about being humble towards God, it's about being humble towards nature, too.
Right. Recognizing that we're not the masters of the universe.
We're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
And we need to treat the natural world with respect.
This reminds me of something else I noticed in Book 17. There's an account where the prophet is talking about the rain, and he asks his companions what they think about it.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them say it's a blessing from Allah, while others say it's because of the stars.
It's interesting. Even back then, people had different ways of understanding the world.
It's like we're always trying to make sense of things, find explanations, even if they don't always align with our faith.
And the prophet, he gently guides them towards a deeper understanding.
He says that those who see the rain as a blessing from Allah are on the right path.
Because they recognize his power and mercy.
It's like he's saying, yes, the stars exist, but they're part of God's creation.
Exactly. Everything ultimately comes from God.
So it's about putting our trust and gratitude in the Creator, rather than in the created things.
It's a shift in perspective from just seeing the physical world to acknowledging the spiritual dimension.
It's about seeing the rain as a sign of God's mercy.
It's about seeing the hand of God in everything.
And that brings us back to the importance of seeking knowledge and understanding.
Right. We have to go beyond just surface level observations and really try to grasp the deeper meaning of our traditions.
And I think that's what makes these stories so powerful. They challenge us to think differently, to see the world through a different lens.
And to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And I think that's something we all need, especially in today's world.
So much of what we've talked about so far has been about the spiritual side of the Istisqaa prayer. But I think it's important to remember the practical side, too.
Right.
These stories show us how important water is for everything. It's essential for life, for agriculture, for our communities.
And it reminds us that water isn't just something we can use however we want.
It's a gift that we need to appreciate and protect.
The prophet praying for the rain to be shared with all parts of the ecosystem that shows a deep understanding of how everything is connected.
Yeah, we can't just we have to think about the impact of our actions.
And make sure that future generations will have what they need.
Absolute sustainability is so important.
As we've been talking about these stories from Sahih Bukhari, I've been wondering how they might connect with someone who isn't familiar with Islamic traditions.
That's an interesting thought.
Because on one hand, these are very specific stories from a specific culture and religion.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think the messages they contain are universal.
I agree. Everyone can relate to the need for rain, the dependence on nature, the search for meaning and comfort.
And the lessons about humility, gratitude, compassion, taking care of the planet, Those are things that everyone can benefit from.
Regardless of their background.
Maybe these stories can be a starting point, a way for people to learn from a different perspective.
Yeah, to open their minds to new ideas.
And to find wisdom and inspiration in unexpected places.
Exactly. It's all about recognizing our shared humanity.
And realizing that we can learn from each other no matter our differences.
We're all in this together.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to reflect on what we've learned so far.
What stood out to you the most?
Well, for me, I think it's the power of storytelling.
Yeah, me too.
These accounts from Sahih Bukhari aren't just dry historical facts. They're vivid narratives that bring these teachings to life.
Right. We see the prophet's character, his compassion, his humility through his actions and his words.
And it's those stories that make these teachings so memorable and impactful.
We can relate to the human experiences they depict, the challenges they faced, the lessons they learned.
And through these stories, we can find guidance and inspiration for our own lives.
It's amazing how these stories have been passed down for centuries, and they still resonate with us today.
Because they contain timeless wisdom that speaks to the human condition.
Yeah, they offer us a way to understand not just the past, but also our present and our future.
And as we move into the next part of our deep dive, I think it's important to consider how these ancient practices can inform our understanding of contemporary challenges.
Like climate change.
Exactly. We live in a world that's increasingly complex and fast-paced.
And often disconnected from the natural world.
And the lessons embedded in these stories offer a different way of thinking.
Instead of focusing on individualism, they emphasize community.
Instead of consumerism, they promote gratitude and contentment.
And instead of trying to dominate nature, they encourage respect and stewardship.
It's like a call to return to our roots, to reconnect with the values that have sustained humanity for so long.
Humility, compassion, generosity, and a deep reverence for nature.
These are the values that can help us create a more just and sustainable world.
And the stories from Sahih Bukhari offer us a glimpse into a way of life where those values were at the forefront.
Where people found strength and solace in their faith and in their community.
And where they lived in harmony with the natural world.
So as we continue our exploration, let's keep these lessons in mind.
And see how they can guide us as we navigate the challenges of our time.
And hopefully inspire us to create a better future for ourselves and for generations to come.
Yeah, that's a great goal to strive for.
So let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and delve even deeper into this fascinating topic.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. It's interesting how even within a community that shared these core beliefs, they still had, different ways of looking at the natural world.
Yeah, it's so human, isn't it? Like we're always trying to explain everything, find those connections.
Right, even when those connections might not be totally rooted in faith.
Right, exactly.
And you see the prophet, peace be upon him, he gently guides them towards a deeper understanding,
Yeah.
Emphasizing that those who saw the rain as this blessing from Allah, they were on the right path.
They were seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. They believed in his power and mercy.
It's like saying, okay, yeah, the stars are there, but they're just part of God's creation.
Right.
They're not the source of the blessing itself.
It's recognizing that hierarchy, understanding that everything comes from the divine.
It's like a reminder to be grateful to the Creator.
Yeah.
Not just to the creation.
Exactly.
Like, don't just see the rain, see the mercy of God in the rain.
Beautifully put. And I think this brings us back to, that importance of seeking knowledge and understanding. These stories, they encourage us to go beyond those surface level observations and really dig into those meanings, the wisdom that's embedded in our traditions.
Yeah, for sure.
It's about looking deeper.
As we've been talking about these stories from Sahih Bukhari,
Yeah.
I'm really struck by how much emphasis is placed on the prophet's character, like his compassion, his humility.
Absolutely. The Istisqaa prayer itself is a beautiful example of that,
Yeah.
It wasn't just some ritual for him. It was this deeply personal and heartfelt plea.
Yeah.
A way of showing his care for the community and his reliance on God.
I keep thinking about him turning his cloak inside out. It's like he's embodying that humility,
Yes.
in a way that words just couldn't capture.
Powerful visual representation of that spiritual state he was trying to cultivate.
It's like he's saying, let's strip away all that pretense, all the ego,
Right.
and just stand before God as our true selves.
And it's not just humility in front of God,
Yeah.
it's humility in the face of nature, too.
Right, acknowledging that we're not in control of everything.
Well, you're dependent on the natural world.
for our survival.
It's a reminder to approach nature with respect and care.
Speaking of reminders,
Yeah.
there's this part in Book 17 where the prophet is teaching his companions about making supplication,
Okay.
like how to ask God for something.
Hmm.
And he advises them to be sincere,
Yeah.
not to be hasty, and to accept God's decree, whatever it may be.
Beautiful teaching. It highlights that importance of aligning our will with the will of God.
It's not about demanding or dictating.
Right.
It's about surrendering and trusting.
Yeah. Trusting in God's wisdom and mercy.
Like saying, hey, I'm coming to you with my needs and my desires, but ultimately I trust your plan for me.
Exactly. And that acceptance, that surrender,
Mm-hmm.
that can bring so much peace, especially when we're facing challenges.
Because we know we're not alone.
Right.
We're guided and supported by something greater than ourselves.
What I find so inspiring about these stories is that they offer us like this roadmap, not just for dealing with drought, but for navigating all of life's complexities.
Totally agree.
The lessons embedded in the Istisqaa prayer, they're timeless, they're universal. They teach us about humility, compassion, reliance on a higher power, and recognizing how connected we are to everything.
Those are lessons that go beyond any one religion.
Absolutely. They're principles that can help us live more meaningful, fulfilling lives.
Yeah, lives that are more connected.
And what's amazing is these lessons aren't taught through some complicated philosophy. They're shared through relatable stories.
Right, through real life experiences.
Yeah, we see how these principles played out in the prophet's life and the lives of his companions.
And it makes them so much more real and powerful.
Yeah, we can connect with their humanity,
Yeah.
recognize our own vulnerabilities and seek guidance when we need it.
It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles.
There's always a source of strength and comfort we can turn to.
And even in the toughest times, there's always hope.
Always a chance for renewal and growth.
We've talked a lot about the spiritual and communal aspects of the Istisqaa prayer, but I think it's important to acknowledge the practical side too.
Yeah, for sure.
These stories highlight how vital water is.
It's not just about survival, it's about communities flourishing.
Absolutely. Water is essential for life, for agriculture, for trade, for so much.
It's the foundation of civilization.
And these stories remind us that water is a precious gift.
It's not something we can take for granted.
Right, we need to cherish it, respect it.
The prophet's prayer for the rain to be redirected to nourish the whole ecosystem, that shows a deep understanding of how interconnected everything is.
And how important balance is.
Right. Our actions have consequences.
Not just for us, but for the whole web of life.
We have to think about future generations.
As we've been discussing these stories from Sahih Bukhari,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about how they might resonate with someone who isn't familiar with Islamic traditions.
That's a good point.
Because on the one hand, these are stories from a specific culture and religion.
Right.
But on the other hand, I feel like the messages they contain are universal.
Yeah, I think so too. Everyone can relate to needing rain depending on natural forces searching for meaning and comfort.
The lessons about humility, gratitude, compassion, taking care of the planet, those are things everyone can benefit from.
Absolutely, regardless of their background.
Maybe these stories could be a way for people to connect with a different perspective.
Yeah, to open themselves up to new ideas and find wisdom in unexpected places.
Exactly. It's all about recognizing our shared humanity.
And realizing that we can learn from each other no matter our differences.
We're all part of this one big human family.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
So what stood out to you the most from what we've discussed so far?
I think for me, it's the power of storytelling.
Yeah, me too.
These accounts from Sahih Bukhari, they're not just like dry historical records.
Right.
They're vivid narratives that bring these teachings to life.
It's like we're right there with them, experiencing it all.
We see the prophet's character, his compassion, his humility, through his actions, his words, how he interacted with his community.
And these stories, they transport us back in time.
Yeah.
And they inspire us to cultivate those same qualities in ourselves. And it's those stories that make these teachings so memorable and impactful.
Right, we connect with those human experiences.
The challenges they face.
The lessons they learned.
And through these stories, we find guidance and inspiration for our own lives.
And what's amazing is that these stories, they've been passed down for generations because they hold timeless wisdom.
They give us a way to understand not just the past, but also our present and our future.
As we delve deeper into these stories,
Yeah.
I can't help but think about how relevant they are for us today.
Mm.
I mean, we live in a world that's so complex and fast-paced.
And often so disconnected from the natural world.
Yeah, it's like we've lost touch with something essential.
And the lessons embedded in these stories, they offer a different way of thinking.
Yeah, instead of individualism, they emphasize community.
Instead of consumerism, they promote gratitude and contentment.
And instead of trying to dominate nature, they encourage respect and stewardship.
It's like a call to return to our roots, to
Yeah.
reconnect with those values that have sustained humanity for centuries.
Humility, compassion, generosity, and a deep reverence for nature.
Those are the values that can help us build a better world.
A world that's more just and sustainable.
And the stories from Sahih Bukhari show us that it's possible,
They offer us a glimpse of a way of life where those values were at the forefront
where people turn to their faith for guidance
and found strength in their community.
and lived in harmony with nature.
As we transition to the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah,
I think it's important to keep these lessons in mind
absolutely. They can guide us as we navigate the challenges of our time,
and hopefully inspire us to create a better future.
for ourselves and for generations to come.
I think that's a great goal to strive for.
So let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned.
And then we'll come back and explore how these ancient practices can inform our understanding of contemporary challenges.
And how they can inspire us to cultivate a deeper connection with our faith, our communities, and the natural world.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. Wow, it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
Exploring the Istisqaa prayer through Sahih Bukhari,
It's revealed so many layers of meaning,
It really has.
connecting us back to a time when faith and reliance on God were just like woven into daily life.
Yeah, it's like we've traveled back in time,
Mm-hmm.
experienced the struggles and the triumphs of these early communities.
Yeah, and discovered this timeless wisdom.
Right, wisdom that still speaks to us today.
And as we move into this final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I think it's important to consider how these ancient practices can inform our understanding of, contemporary challenges.
Like climate change.
Exactly.
That's something that's been on my mind throughout our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The stories from Sahih Bukhari, they highlight this deep reverence for nature,
Yeah.
this recognition that we're not separate from it,
Right.
but we're connected to it.
The prophet's prayer for the rain to be redirected,
Mm-hmm.
to nourish the whole ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful example.
It
It
is.
shows this profound understanding of interconnectedness.
Right. What benefits one part of the web of life benefits us all.
It's a reminder that our actions have consequences,
Yeah.
and we have a responsibility to care for the environment
To conserve resources, to ensure a sustainable future,
for everyone.
And I think the Istisqaa prayer itself offers a valuable perspective on how to approach these challenges.
Oh, so?
It's not just about asking for what we need.
Right.
It's acknowledging that we depend on something greater than ourselves.
It's about humility.
Exactly. Recognizing that we're not in control.
Yeah, there are forces beyond our understanding that govern the natural world.
And maybe in the face of these challenges,
Yeah.
humility is what we need most.
Because it allows us to let go of that illusion of control,
Right.
to recognize our limitations.
To seek guidance and support from something beyond ourselves.
It's about shifting from a mindset of dominion over nature
Mm-hmm.
to one of stewardship and partnership.
And I think that shift in perspective is crucial for addressing these complex environmental challenges we face.
Yeah, we need to see ourselves as part of nature, not separate from it.
Our well-being is tied to the health of the planet.
And the stories from Sahih Bukhari,
Yeah.
they offer a powerful reminder of that interconnectedness.
The Istisqaa prayer wasn't just about seeking rain for human needs.
Right.
It was about seeking balance and harmony within the whole ecosystem.
And that balance, that harmony, is something we need to restore.
In our relationship with nature.
For sure.
One thing that really stands out to me is how these stories emphasize the communal aspect of the Istisqaa prayer.
Yeah, it wasn't just an individual praying on their own
It was a collective effort, the whole community coming together.
to seek God's blessings.
It shows the power of collective action.
Right. We're stronger together.
We can support each other through tough times.
And we can accomplish more when we work together towards a common goal.
And that's a lesson we need today as we face climate change.
It's not something one person or one country can solve alone.
It requires global cooperation, collaboration, a shared sense of responsibility.
The Istisqaa prayer, it kind of offers a model for this collective action.
Reminding us that we're all part of a larger community.
We're all interconnected,
And our actions,
both individually and collectively,
they have the power to shape the future.
to create a world that's more just compassionate and sustainable.
It's been amazing exploring the Istisqaa prayer through the lens of Sahih Bukhari.
Yeah, we've uncovered so much wisdom, insight, inspiration.
These ancient traditions, they have so much to offer.
They really do.
It's a testament to the power of these stories.
Their ability to transcend time and place.
And to speak to those deep longings in our hearts.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
We've talked about the Istisqaa prayer as a way to seek rain and blessings.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it points to something deeper.
What's that?
This fundamental human need to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, to find meaning and purpose in a world that can feel so chaotic and uncertain.
It's about knowing we're not alone. There's a source of strength and comfort we can always turn to.
Whether we call it God or nature or just the interconnected web of life.
So as you go about your day,
Yeah.
I want you to think about this.
Okay.
What are the sources of sustenance and nourishment in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you turn for guidance and support when things get tough?
And how can you cultivate a deeper sense of gratitude?
For all the blessings you have?
Big and small.
Those are some things to ponder.
They really are. And in exploring those questions,
Yeah.
we might find ourselves connecting to something deeper
Something more profound.
that nourishes our souls.
And gives us the strength to face whatever challenges come our way.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the heart of Islamic tradition.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the Istisqaa prayer and the lessons it holds for us today. Until next time,
Yeah.
may your hearts be filled with peace and your lives with blessings.